Recently, the United States has approved a $2 trillion stimulus package. Now, that being said, I think it is a good time to talk about inflation, stagflation, and hyperinflation. Let's start with the definition of inflation. It is a sustained increase in the general price level of goods and services in an economy in a period of time. That is why when you ask your grandparents how much did apples or bananas cost 50 to 60 years ago, they will say something along the lines of 10 to 20 cents. That's what inflation does. It increases the amount of dollars out there within an economy and the prices of goods. Now, today 10 or 20 cents would not buy you anything. Matter of fact, if most people were to come across 10 to 20 cents laying on the ground, they would just walk over it. The average inflation rate in the US has been 2 to 3%. When inflation has exceeded 50% on a monthly basis, that's when you hit hyperinflation. A couple examples of hyperinflation would be Venezuela, Germany between 1921 and 1923, right before the Nazi regime rose to power. Matter of fact, some people would argue that some of the reason why Hitler was able to get into power was due to fiscal irresponsibility, hyperinflation being one of them. Another case would be Zimbabwe. They had the second highest incidence of hyperinflation on record. On November 2008, their inflation rate was approximately 79.6 billion%. Their unemployment rate was around 80%, and prices doubled every 24.7 hours in Zimbabwe. When prices are doubling every 20 hours, there really is no point in having a savings account. Value is not even a sensible word at that point. In a hyperinflation situation, it may make sense just to spend your whole entire check the moment you get it. Go right to the grocery store and buy all the goods and hoard them. In that circumstance. Reason being is if you put your money in the bank, you will not be able to afford anything with that money in the next 2 days. Some of the reasons why Zimbabwe had that hyperinflation is debatable, but economists will tell you high national debt, decline in economic output, decline in export earnings, lack of confidence in government, economy, and politicians. Those are just a couple of reasons I arbitrarily picked out. You could come up with more, but I just wanted to keep it simple, so I simplified it. Also around that time, their government was trying to use price control. I have read a lot about these kind of scenarios where things got out of hand and the government is trying to help and it just does not seem to better things. There is no real right or wrong answer, it's just a judgment call. What they did end up doing though was they made other currencies illegal because people resorted to US dollars and other currencies instead of their own currency. And then they created a new currency. And today, that new currency is experiencing hyperinflation. And they're probably also experiencing COVID-19 at the same exact time. Hyperinflation definitely affects an economy in a negative way. All these examples I just brought up have had or currently are today having a terrible time living in those conditions. Zimbabwe and Venezuela are still struggling to bring their economy a good living standard. Germany eventually overcame hyperinflation and instead settled with a worse monster, Adolf Hitler. It took Germany about 30 years after World War II to recover and become a more democratic, productive society. In today's standards, most economists will tell you Germany is a viable economy, if not all economists. They'll talk about the low corruption, they're environmental friendly, they're up there when it comes to education, etc. Now this leads me to stagflation, and this is something the US could have in the next coming months. It is a situation in which the inflation rate is high, economic growth rate slows, and unemployment remains steadily high. The only time we have had stagflation was between 1973 and 1975. The US economy posted 6 consecutive quarters of declining GDP and at the same time tripled its inflation. We could have some form of stagflation mixed with something worse than a recession. A recession is defined as 2 consecutive quarters of declining GDP. You have to remember, we had a 20% unemployment rate in the Great Depression. Some people are predicting we will see 30% unemployment, if not more. Unemployment is a big factor of a depression or recession. There'll be a big collapse in the economy. Reason being, if people are unemployed, they spend less. That means less tax revenue for the government. The government mainly gets its money in three ways: taxes, debt, or inflation. If they can't use more taxes, which they probably won't under this administration, they will probably resort to inflation. If you guys like my videos, please like and subscribe.